Okay, I want to play a game of Two Truths and a Lie, 6-0 Next Gem Edition. So let's talk about it. What's going on, y'all? I'm Rafa, the Pickleball Tech Dude, and we're going to be talking about the 3 paddle lineups that 6-0 took 18 months to bring to market. Now, 6-0 did take some time to come with some stuff that looks genuinely interesting on paper. A new grit texture called Diamond Tough, silicone gel inserts that directly reduce vibrations in the handles, and a custom gel layer that sits in between the face and the core to improve pop and power. Now, in my opinion, each of these things does make some difference to the paddle performance. And in the end, each paddle line has their own unique twists that we'll get into. I discovered there's one key assumption about each of these lineups that has defined their criticism online. And in the end, I believe 2 of these assumptions are true and one of them is very false. Now, before we get into those, as a quick disclaimer, 6-0 had no input or requirements for this review at all. In fact, they probably won't even know it exists until I drop it. If you do decide to pick up one of these paddles, using my discount code RAFA or the link in the description provides you 10% off. It does also provide me a small kickback that I pour directly back into these videos, but per usual, the best way to support me is to like the video and be subscribed here on YouTube and following over on Instagram and TikTok, where I'm dropping some of the best content in all of Pickleball. And now with all of that out of the way, let's play. Let's start off with where I think 6-0 made the biggest improvement when comparing across power profiles. The Ruby Pro was designed to take the spotlight of premium control paddle away from the original Ruby, but also add a little bit of offense. It's currently only available in a hybrid 14mm shape with a thin taper. Aside from the features mentioned at the beginning, the Ruby Pro at its core, no pun intended, is still a Gen 2 thermoform paddle, but with slightly larger polypropylene cells this time around. The overarching sentiment I see about the Ruby Pro online is that the only thing special about it is the insane grit texture, which gets you really high spin. And based on my personal experience, that is absolutely correct. Now, don't get me wrong, this is the modern take on a control paddle that 6-0 absolutely needed. Super quick and poppy at the net, while not providing as much power from the baseline and the mid-court, and instead replacing it with slightly more dwell and ability to feel the ball, which will make it ideal for players at any skill level. The main drawback, in my opinion, though, is that after playing with it and after looking at the stats on paper, you really see absolutely nothing that stands out except the spin numbers. Now, I can confirm that the Diamond Tough grit on the Ruby Pro feels like absolute sandpaper and produces really great spin numbers. But outside of that, the paddle sweet spot isn't super forgiving and requires a lot of weight modification to bring out. And so unfortunately, I find myself thinking how without the weight modifications and with the price point we're at for a control paddle, the Ruby Pro still probably breaks top 5 control paddles released in the last year, but really just doesn't differentiate itself a lot for me. Now let's talk about the Coral, 6-0's all-court option and their introduction into the Gen 4 world. This is the only paddle lineup that doesn't have the custom gel layer between the face sheets and the core. And it also is the only lineup as of this recording that already comes in elongated hybrid wide body options. The elongated and the hybrid look very similar though, in that they both have arrow curved tops with the taper, so there's really just a difference of height and width. In the center of the paddle is 16mm EPP foam with grid-like cuts in it. This is what 6-0 is calling their tectonic core. We also have a layer of EPP in the outer ring before we get to the firm foam and the edge guard characteristic of thermoform paddles. But there's also EVA sandwiched between the EPP areas, which makes this what I call a floating core Gen 4. The Coral retails for $180 with discount code RAFA, and the main sentiment that I see online is that the Coral is the all-court paddle of 2025. And again, while I wouldn't describe myself as somebody that falls in line with mainstream opinion, I also found myself evaluating that as a pretty accurate statement. Of the many floating core Gen 4 paddles that came out in 25, this paddle nearly eclipsed the top 5, and it was only beat out by more power-oriented paddles. The Coral is really nothing flashy, and it also has the Diamond Tough texture, but is not nearly even half as gritty as the Ruby Pro. However, it has a very consistent, what I call 7 out of 10 performance on all parts of the court. It's definitely a power upgrade from the Ruby Pro. You get access to really nice dwell time and pretty decent spin despite the lack of physical texture. You don't feel like the power is super lacking or feels different in any part of the court, making it very predictable. And it also has one of the biggest sweet spots of any all-court paddle on the market, even without weight modification. This paddle was hard to dial in at first because I was very accustomed to the ultra power paddles that were coming out. But once you do dial it in, I think the Coral and maybe a couple of other paddles on the entire market really position themselves as the new quintessential all-court paddles that can actually keep up with the ultra high power. All right, finally we've gotten to the Black Opal. And since we've already gone through two truths, I think you probably know where this is going. Anyways, it's actually very similar to the Coral, but differentiates itself in three key ways. It's 14mm instead of 16mm. The center and outer layer form is similar to EPP, but about 14% more dense and doesn't contain the grid-like tectonic structure. And the EVA band is instead replaced by a carbon fiber frame. It sounds like those changes are minimal, but the reality is it causes a drastic change in power in the upward direction. Now, the main conclusion that people draw online about the Black Opal that I completely disagree with is that it has a small sweet spot and therefore is a bad paddle. The Black Opal absolutely has a small sweet spot. In my experience, it really doesn't broaden much with weight modification, and it can make your ball bounces very unpredictable when hitting off-center shots. Where I have a problem with the sentiment is that those things don't make the Black Opal a bad paddle. For the average player, including myself, there's probably about 15 different paddles that all come with a slight decrease in power compared to the Black Opal, but are way easier to use. But I'm also not naive to the fact that if you are an advanced player who can hit a sweet spot consistently, the Black Opal is a weapon. I think if you hit the center of the Black Opal, it's a paddle whose power rivals that of a paddle that I mained for a long time last year, the Gearbox GX2. So, is the sweet spot small and unforgiving? Absolutely. Is this a power paddle that I'm going to recommend to people often? Absolutely not. But I think in the end, to call the Black Opal a bad paddle is to simply ignore the skill that's required to use it properly. But those are just my personal takes on the 6-0 Next Gem series. I would love to hear your opinions down in the comments as well. If you made it here to the end, thank you so much for watching per usual. Make sure you've liked, subscribed, and make sure you're following me at PBTechDude over on Instagram and TikTok as well, where I'm dropping a ton of valuable content daily, not just about paddles, but about all types of pickleball equipment, news in the world of pros, and about pickleball as an industry. But with all that said, please stay happy, stay healthy, and stay out on the court, and I'll see you really soon. Peace.